Well, a lot of people think that a futurist is about predicting the future, as you would, and some of the job is that, but I think increasingly the job is about preparation, not just prediction. So we do try to help businesses, brands, organizations, even individual people actually try to prepare for the future. And we do that in lots of different ways. We're scanning the horizon for trends, so pockets of the future in the present. And also we're trying to help people come up with alternative perspectives on the future. And sometimes that's called scenarios, and a lot of people will have done scenario planning. But what we're really trying to do there is to rehearse for and practice for different possible outcomes and different possible futures. And in that respect, we're trying to help people not always be right about the future as we do when we're predicting, but certainly try not to be wrong, so that we hope that we have foreseen most, if not all, future possibilities that are coming down the line. Well, there are some very big trends. We might call them macro trends as opposed to micro trends. I mean, there are mega trends that are global and last for decades. There are macro trends, which are still big trends. They're important. They have huge impact on businesses, organizations, consumers, citizens. And there are micro trends that are much smaller, burn out a bit quicker, if you like, and can come and go. All of them are important, and the interplay between all of them is very important. But I would say that there are some key trends that are affecting all of us pretty much across the world, actually, in slightly different ways. One of the big ones is decentralization. We've heard a lot about that in the last few years. I think people will be used to thinking about cryptocurrency, about decentralized finance or DeFi. But what's behind all of that is a bigger trend around decentralization. So it's the breaking down of old hierarchical systems that were very, organizationally vertical, if you like. And we can see some of those like institutional failures. We can see some of those organizations crumbling, if you like, falling away, because what is emerging is a new kind of world, which is more networked. So it's a flatter structure, less hierarchical. And because of that, it's more participative and inclusive. And so people are becoming involved in and participating in new types of business, new types of revenue generation, the creator economy, the decentralized finance sector, if you like. Web3 is often what people talk about when they refer to this. And one of the reasons it's very popular with people is because it's permissionless. So the trust is across the network as a whole. There is no one centralized authority that is kind of giving you permission to come and play or take part and participate in this organization or business or whatever it might be. And so that is very attractive to a new generation. Of course, one of the things we should remember about trends is that for every trend, there's a counter trend. So the more decentralization we see in certain quarters and with startups and new types of business, the more re-centralization we see with some of the legacy businesses. So one of the things we are probably observing at the moment is, and you might be able to feel this, everybody, I think, when I test this out on people, they say they can, is a tension between the new emerging system of decentralization and the re-centralization, where older businesses and organizations and institutions are trying to wrestle back the control into the centralized format. So this is where we are at the moment. And one of the reasons we are feeling a little bit in this liminal space, a bit of stagnation, a movement without progress, is because there is this jostling, this tension between these two big trends. And I think that's one of the biggest things and the most important things for businesses today. Organizations, it's really important that one doesn't one looks to the horizon for lots of different trends, but one doesn't come at this thinking, I need to activate and action all of these things I'm seeing on the horizon, because it's so overwhelming. I mean, it would be a massive cognitive overload or organizational overload. But one has to pick one's way through some of these trends and look at exactly how they're going to affect the type of business you're in, the sector you're in, the kinds of consumers you have, the purpose of your organization, the vision that you're trying to build towards, and then choose which trends are important to you and the ones that you want to activate, and not necessarily try and boil the ocean and sort of act on everything. And one of the most important ways to use these trends for organizations, I think, is to take the organizational vision or purpose, which might be a vision that's 20 or 30 years in advance, and you're trying to get somewhere, but you have a really clear idea of what your market, your sector, your company, or your consumers are going to be like in the further future. And then use that to dictate what 2 to 3 actions you're going to take in the next 12 to 18 months that are going to get you to that vision. And once you have that model and that framework to work with as an organization, you can harness the relevant trends that are going to help you get there. And all the other trends can kind of go by the wayside. Somebody else can pick those up and harness and augment them and turn them to their advantage. But you, as an organization, a brand, a company, have your own distinct purpose. And so you can use the signals from the trends that are relevant to you. You don't have to try and do everything, because the 2 questions I tend to get asked the most from organizations are, which are the most important trends that are going to have the biggest impact on us, and over what time length? So one of the biggest challenges is to really try and predict accurately whether a trend is really going to take off in the next 6 months or the next 12 months, or whether it's going to go a little bit quiet into the trough of disillusionment and then come back, burning brighter sort of 5 years later. So this is what we're trying to work out with horizon scanning. But again, I say to organizations, it's for somebody like me, or somebody that works in foresight, strategic foresight or futures, to try and work with a company to work out which trends are the most relevant and appropriate to that business, and make them work harder for you. We're facing at the moment with technologies, there's still an amount of excitement with tech, but there's also, we've had 20 years of dystopian visions of technology and corporatocracy, if you like, harnessing technologies against populations, against citizens. And that is a real possibility, an alternative future, a possible future, if you like. But I mean, even if you think yourself, you probably can't think of a really happy, positive sci-fi movie since Back to the Future, which is over 30 years ago. So we're kind of training our brains to perceive and expect dystopian futures. Now, we must do that. We must think about dystopian futures because they test out our ethical boundaries. They test out our values, what we will and will not put up with, how we want to live as a society, and what our values really are when they're tested. But equally, we should think optimistically. And when we're doing scenarios, we do think about dystopias, but we also try to think about, if not utopias, the positive possible futures that are ahead of us. At the moment, there is a lot of media narrative around AI and the possible ethical considerations and dangers of AI if it reaches artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, where the AI is so, let's say, smart, intelligent, not conscious necessarily, but intelligent, that it can make its own decisions, and those decisions can have a very negative impact on the human race. That is a legitimate concern, and we should be working out how to prevent that. But also, I'm not necessarily sure that we should just pause all technological development of AI. And anyway, I think the genie's out of the bottle now, that it's too late to do that. But what we should also be thinking is how we can harness AI to its most positive and productive conclusions and implications, if you like. And I think, there's a truth in life that you get what you focus on. I mean, I think we all know that that's true. So if we focus on the positive and we focus on the good outcomes, not just the negative outcomes, which seem to be all prevailing in the media at the moment, then we will get a positive outcome, because that's what people will be focusing on, and it will lend itself to that kind of, you know, implication or conclusion. So there are lots of ethical considerations. But I don't think that should get in the way of thinking about how we can harness AI and other technologies, gene editing, CRISPR, all of these sorts of things, for the good of individuals and society as a whole. Now, one micro trend which is gathering steam, which I've been talking about for a few years now, it was on the periphery, which is on the fringes and on the periphery is where I really look for most of my trends, because they're still nascent and emergent, so you can kind of mold them and talk about them in a way that's so less codified. One of them that's really interesting is neuro rights. So I noticed a few years ago that we were having many more technologies that were going to be applied to cognitive intelligence or our cognition. So we know about Elon Musk's Neuralink, which are implants in the brain that are going to help you pick up on the messages from neurons and then help us sort of thought control devices or download music or store memories, these sorts of things. And that all sounds like science fiction, but there are other areas of neurotech which are less invasive. So putting neurotech into earbuds when you're listening to music or your phone, or having a cap or a hat with sensors in that are being used to monitor focus or attention, or whether an employer is distracted, for example. Now, lots of people might think that's quite dystopian, and to an extent it is, depends how it's used, of course. But I thought, well, hang on a minute. Is this going to come in as a way of surveilling and monitoring employees? Am I going to need to have neurotech in all of my devices, because I won't be able to buy any devices without this neurotech? What does this mean? Somebody somewhere via a tech platform is going to be monitoring me. So I thought, actually, there's going to be a need for neuro rights, so the protection of our mental privacy, if you like. And indeed, when I did some more digging, I found that in Chile, there was a law trying to be passed through Parliament, which was going to help protect citizens' mental privacy. So this is to protect them from sort of the manipulation, if you like, or the modification of their thoughts or ideas or memories. And again, it sounds like science fiction, but it was actually happening in another country, and it's legislation that they were trying to pass through Parliament. Not sure of the status of it right now, but neuro rights and neuro wrongs is what I'm kind of calling it as a micro trend. That is definitely on the horizon, and actually in the last 12 months it's really picked up. I mean, I was predicting that it would come into the workforce in 2022, 23. It is already in the workforce in China and in some other places in the world. But I think people are picking up on it now, and it's not just an emergent trend now. It's kind of moving into the mainstream. So that's very interesting.